Hi, my name is Sanvi. Today we're going to be speaking with Miss Sravani Nanduri. Miss Nanduri graduated from Rutgers University with a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology and Exercise Science. She received her master's degree in cardiovascular perfusion from Rush University. Since June of 2019, she has been working at New York Presbyterian Hospital, Columbia University Medical as a perfusionist. So, Miss Nanduri, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. Um,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, of course. So, first off, how did you decide to go to Rutgers and what were your other options?
So, being from Jersey, I Rutgers was just like an automatic option for me because like a very popular option. It's where like I knew a lot of people were going there, so I had a lot of exposure to it. I went there a lot in high school to like see upperclassmen that were there, and they
Mhm.
would show me around campus. I did consider some other schools, but they were all nearby. I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, but I also looked at like Rutgers, Newark, Rutgers, Camden, and I also looked at Temple and Drexel, uh, and that's pretty much all I can remember. And TJ, NJIT.
Okay, got it.
So I looked at all these schools, but Rutgers made the most sense. Rutgers, New Brunswick made the most sense for me because it had the most majors, and I knew I wanted to go into healthcare, but I wasn't exactly sure which major I wanted to pursue.
Mhm.
So I liked the idea of having a lot of options to be able to choose from. It was also close to home, which was good for me because I was a little nervous at the time about, this new chapter of my life, basically. And it was also very financially friendly for me because I knew that if I wanted to go into sciences, I would have probably had to pursue graduate studies afterwards, which
Mhm.
cost a lot. So I wanted to try and keep my undergrad as um, financially friendly as possible so I could afford grad school too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you said you knew you wanted to do healthcare. What kind of interests or passions did you have in high school that led you to that?
Sure. So I actually, when I was in middle school, I knew that I thought I wanted to do veterinary science.
Mhm.
And so I applied to a school, a VOTEC school, which has different academies that are tailored along with your regular high school classes. They have one class that's tailored to this field that you're interested in. So I applied to the Veterinary Science Academy and I got in. And every day, along with like my regular English, history, all these classes, I also had a vet science class.
Mhm.
And I realized and I had it every day for 4 years. And I realized after the 4 years that I really enjoyed the healthcare aspect of it, but not the veterinary aspect of it.
Mhm.
So that really helped me decide that I really wanted to pursue human healthcare basically rather than animal healthcare.
Mhm.
And then I also volunteered at a hospital for 2 years in high school, which really helped me realize this was what I wanted to do. I didn't directly work with patients, but I got to see like how a hospital works, and kind of like the inner workings of a hospital, basically,
Mhm.
that I wouldn't have known beforehand. And I also volunteered for the Red Cross. And when we volunteered for the Red Cross, we ran a lot of blood drives every year. So I just had, without even realizing, I just kept having these different exposures to healthcare. And I noticed that I was very passionate about them. And that's why I started pursuing healthcare once I got to college as well.
That's great. So once you got to college, how did you like Rutgers and what kind of extracurriculars were you involved in?
So when I got to Rutgers, I would say like my first year was pretty tough for me. I was very sure that I wanted to go into medicine. So I was on the pre med track without any research. I just knew, okay, healthcare. And my first thought was pre med. I didn't really think about any other options that I might have. I didn't really do my research.
Mhm.
And because of that, I kind of overloaded myself my first year, especially my first semester. I took a lot of tough classes at once,
Mhm.
so that I could kind of get myself ready to take Orgo soon and those kind of classes you need for med school.
Mhm.
And so I did pretty poorly my first semester at Rutgers. And then once I realized that, I need to kind of figure out my own way of how to do this, and that there's no really one way to get to the end goal, and also that I need more exposure to all of healthcare to know what my end goal really is. I started to take more classes that interested me rather than just the classes I was supposed to take. And I started taking gender studies classes where I just kind of learned more about like women's rights, etc. And so that caused me that gave me my minor, which was a gender studies minor.
Oh, that's so
And
cool.
then yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that minor. And then I originally was thinking of doing a bio major, but I realized that a lot of classes that I needed for a biology major weren't really classes that interested me. And so I realized anatomy was something that really interested me. So I started going into taking a lot of anatomy classes, which I realized fit into a kinesiology major.
Mhm.
And that's how I did chose my major of kinesiology. So these were my major and my minor. And extracurricular wise, I would say my biggest extracurricular was this organization I was involved in called She's the First.
Okay.
And that organization basically was a chapter of that organization was at Rutgers. And there were me and the other members, we would get together every couple of weeks, and we would basically make plans to like create events or fundraisers to basically raise funds to sponsor girls' education in low income countries where they're the first in their families to be attending school.
Mhm.
So that was an organization that I was really passionate about. And I tried not to spread myself too thin because there were these very specific things I cared about a lot, and I just wanted to focus my energy on the things that really mattered to me.
Mhm.
So I would say that was my biggest organization outside of classes.
Mhm.
I also worked I also worked at Rutgers at Information of Technology office.
Okay.
So that was something else I was involved in at Rutgers.
Mm. Was it hard to manage like working with all of your schoolwork and everything?
It really wasn't. It was at first, but once I started to do the things that I really cared about,
Mhm.
and eventually you kind of like form a routine, and you start making sense of everything, and you start feeling a little bit less overwhelmed with classes and extracurriculars and getting from one place to another, or like figuring out what you're eating because now you're not at home.
Mhm.
Um, but once you get into the routine of everything, it really doesn't feel overwhelming because a lot of the things that you do, you also really care about.
Mhm.
So it really does become worth it once you're doing the things for the right reason.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. So you said you worked at Rutgers itself, but you also worked at Kumon, right? Throughout college?
I did, but I got really lucky because I started working at Kumon when I was in high school when I was 16,
Oh, okay.
and my boss was really really flexible with me. So when I started college, I could just kind of go to work anytime I wanted to. So if I was ever home on the weekends, I would go to work for her, or if she was really busy one weekend, she would let me know, and then I would go home that weekend.
Mhm.
But otherwise, it wasn't a very demanding work schedule at Kumon.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And then during college, what made you decide to do perfusion?
So actually, when I was in college, like I mentioned earlier, I thought of medicine, like going to med school.
Mhm.
I soon realized that wasn't for me because mostly because I didn't want to be in school for that many years. I just knew I didn't have um, that much time allotted to it. And so then I was thinking of physical therapy because I was a kinesiology major, which most of the people that are in a kinesiology major, they either go into sports training or they go into physical therapy.
Mhm.
And so I was thinking of physical therapy. Sports training wasn't very interesting to me, but I think I went to shadow an occupational therapist, which is very similar to physical therapy, but it actually that's not true. It's pretty different, but I would say the routine and like the daily life aspect of it is more similar to physical therapy than other fields that I was able to shadow.
Okay.
And once I started shadowing, I realized that it might not be the right career for me.
Mhm.
So when I realized that, then was interested in looking into um, what kind of jobs are involved in the operating room, because for some reason that always fascinated me. I also actually, sorry to reel us back to high school, but I was like a junior volunteer at an EMS, um, like a local ambulance squad.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in high school, I completely forgot about that earlier. But that really showed me what it's like to work in a more emergent or fast-paced environments. So because I did that in high school, I thought maybe there's something like that I could pursue to shadow in college, and I knew the OR was a pretty fast-paced environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked up some OR careers where you didn't have to go to med school and that are different from nursing, just because I wanted to see what else was out there other than nursing and doctor. And I found out about perfusion, and I was able to shadow a perfusionist the summer before junior year. I shadowed them the entire summer. I got to watch a lot of cool surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
And just by shadowing them that summer, I knew it was the right career for me. Just the pace and the operating room, the job that they get to do, like this, the kind of intensity of it. And I just could really see myself in that role more than anything else that I could shadow. So that's when I knew it was the right thing for me to pursue.
Mm-hmm. So did you do that shadowing during college, you said?
I did. It was right after my sophomore year of college.
Okay. So then was
So
that like still at a good timeline for you to apply to perfusion school?
it was because so that kind of put me on track to some perfusion schools did require um, the GREs, but some didn't. But
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to keep all my options open. So because I was able to figure this out, like right before my real junior year in college started, I
Mm-hmm.
had enough time to prep for at the same time as I was shadowing, I started studying for my GREs that summer.
Okay.
And then I was able to take my GREs junior year and start applying end of junior year and beginning of senior year to all the perfusion schools.
Got it. And then out of those perfusion schools, what made you choose Rush?
So there were actually there's not a lot of perfusion schools out there, and there's not a lot of information on them
Mm-hmm.
online, which made it really difficult to decide where to apply. But there were three programs that I applied to. One was Rush, and then one was um, There was a Long Island University program, which was very close, and so that would have been very convenient. And then the third was I believe I applied to a program in MUS in South Carolina called MUSC.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I really wanted to go to Rush because I felt like I was getting the most help from the director, the most communication from the director with all the questions I had about the program. She
Okay.
was always picking up the phone every time I had questions, and I really liked the way that she described the program.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I chose but so when I had these three schools kind of selected, there were other schools, but not all the programs were master programs. Some of them were just post-bachelor certifications, which
Okay.
meant that they were shorter, like they would be a year long instead of 2 years long. But I just thought it would make sense for me professionally to get a master's degree as well, even if it required more time
Mm-hmm.
before I started making an income, because they started phasing out the credibility of the post bachelor degree. So I really wanted to just get the master's.
Yeah.
Um, so out of the three programs, I had the interview at Rush first, and I loved the city of Chicago where Rush is, and I loved the program, and I loved the students that I met there. LIU actually stopped taking students that year. They actually closed the program that year to convert it into a new program. So they weren't accepting any students that year.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out about that too late. It was after I applied. And then the third program, I think by the time they gave me an invitation, I already got for an interview, I already got the acceptance at Rush.
Mm-hmm.
And I just fell in love with the program so much that I didn't attend the MUSC interview because I knew I wanted to go to Rush.
Mm-hmm. And you liked your experience there?
I did. It was like a pretty tough transition for me, because it was my first time living so far away from my family.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think, a 3 hour flight, which isn't very long, but it seemed very long at the time. I didn't know anyone there. And graduate schools, it was very different from undergrad. It was very it was very unstructured in comparison and a lot of self-teaching.
Okay.
So that I had a lot of trouble with at first because I was very used to structure and specific tests on specific days and a lot of organization. But you basically learn how to kind of depend on yourself and teach yourself and collaborate with your peers and your classmates.
Hmm. Oh, that's great. So now that you've become a perfusionist, really quickly, can you just explain like what your job is on like day-to-day basis? Because I know it's a pretty small field.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, perfusion is a pretty small field. Basically, what we do is we basically take care of heart and lung function when someone is getting any kind of open heart surgery.
Okay.
And the reason is because whenever someone needs some kind of uh, big procedure done on their heart, where their chest needs to be open and their heart is exposed, or their heart is opened, a lot of times their heart needs to be still, and their lungs have to also be still, which means that they're not breathing and their heart's not beating blood. So now the body has all these needs from the heart and the lungs that are not being met. Um, and the way to fix that is you basically bypass the heart and the lungs through this machine called the heart lung machine.
Hmm.
And the heart lung machine is what we perfusionists are trained to operate. And through that, we supply the whole body with all the metabolic needs that it needs. We remove any wastes. We supply things like blood pressure and anesthetic during the surgery.
Hmm.
And we allow the surgeon to basically work on a still heart so that they can take care of the patient, do what they need to do. And then once they've fixed the heart can start beating again. We start reducing our support, and the heart increases its support, and it kind of takes over its job again.
Got it.
That's
Um,
our main job.
mhm. And then do you have any other additional responsibilities at the hospital that you sometimes have to take over?
We also we also take care of something called ECMO.
Mhm.
ECMO is basically what I just described to you in a heart lung machine, but for more long term purposes.
Okay.
For example, if a patient is waiting for a lung transplant because their lung function is very reduced, or a heart transplant, or for example, when COVID happened, a lot of COVID patients needed ECMO support because their lungs weren't functioning and even their heart was affected a lot of times. So they needed long term heart lung support,
Mhm.
which we provided through our ECMO circuits. ECMO stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. So
Okay.
we basically provide the pressure and the lung support for a longer period of time. It can range from weeks to sometimes months
Mhm.
until the patient's either able to get back on their feet or they've were able to find a new organ that that patient needs and that they're eligible for.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
So, with those responsibilities, what does an average work week look like for you?
So the average workday varies significantly for me from day to day, and for me and another perfusionist at a different hospital.
Mhm.
Most of that, the difference between me and another perfusionist at a different hospital, that difference is because of the busyness of the hospital. Some
Mhm.
hospitals don't do any ECMO, and some of them do very infrequent heart surgeries because they only have one or two surgeons,
Mhm.
which can be a great quality of life for someone who maybe is, a mom or a dad who has worked at a busy institution and now want to spend more time with their family or just have more time for other things in their lives, or
Mhm.
they want to teach. Um, they can kind of spend one day doing one surgery and then another day teaching or another day with the family. Um, and we also all take call. So that can also look very differently from person to person.
Mhm.
So for me, my average day can be a little bit busy because we have an institution where we do heart surgeries regularly. We also do transplants, which not every hospital does.
Okay.
And we do ECMO. We do a lot of ECMO in our hospital. So because of that, our day to day is busier. from what we call our day shift,
Mhm.
which is what I had today. I worked from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Okay.
But then I also take call about 16 to 20 weeks a year. Um,
Mm.
and that means that anytime after that 2 p.m., I basically there's a call team where if anything happens, if there's surgery still being done, or if there's an emergency case, or just to take care of our ECMO patients that are already in the hospital,
Mhm.
those 16 hours during the week and on the weekends, the 24 hours are always covered by a perfusionist. So that's the call schedule, which is why my day sometimes I have an 8-hour workday, sometimes I have a 3-hour workday, sometimes I have a 16-hour workday.
Wow.
So
Okay.
there's really no telling how one day is going to look from the next.
Mhm. So going off
Mhm.
of your irregular hours, are you usually able to take time off to, travel, pursue hobbies, spend time with family, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say I had trouble with that at the beginning because it was just a lot of work and responsibility. But
Mhm.
I was very lucky because I was placed in three pretty busy rotation sites during my graduate education,
Mhm.
where I got a lot of clinical experience at these different hospitals that were also busy. So I got a really good idea of how to manage my time, how to make sure I get food in my system if I have 15 minutes to spare, how to be able to estimate, how much sleep I can get one night, and if I need to sleep in a call room for the night, something like that. Um, Sometimes it does obviously get tough, but I'm very lucky because I have very good coworkers who, if I need to leave early for a doctor's appointment or if I want to really go on a week vacation, my boss will always try and work with me and with my coworkers to try and make all of us happy where we're working. So it really makes a difference that I have a great team to work with.
Oh, yeah. Glad. So you are going to Sweden in a week, so that's exciting.
I
Yeah, so
am very excited.
so how many vacations like that are you able to take like throughout the year, do you think?
So that part's really nice. I do get 5 weeks off a year, which is a lot more than the average. And technically, it's really nice. But there are a lot of weekends that I do have to give up to go to work.
Mhm.
So I think it kind of does average out. Like there's some months where I'm not really going. I don't have a weekend off, and I'm working like 21 days straight. But I also get like 25 days off a year. So it's really nice. And as long as I'm able to plan well and like the people in my life are able to kind of understand the demands of the job and, kind of work with me to just make time with for me, like when they're able to, just like I'm able to, it's never a problem.
Mm. Well, that's good. So looking back on your journey, would you have done anything differently?
My journey from where's the beginning point? Like college, you'd say?
Yeah.
I would say I would not really do anything differently. There were times when I wish that I explored more options in high school for where I went to college. But I actually really, really enjoyed going to Rutgers, and being that close to home allowed me to see my family a lot.
Mhm.
And it did allow me to be exposed to a lot of majors. And I think if I didn't do that, who knows, maybe I wouldn't have found out about perfusion and gone to grad school and been where I am. So I am actually very happy with the way that everything has turned out, and I really enjoy my career and my life now. And I don't think there's anything that I would really change.
That's great. So the last thing is, what are three pieces of advice you would give to high schoolers looking to join the medical field or perfusion specifically?
I would say if there's anyone that is interested in healthcare, one, if I want people to make sure that they're entering healthcare for the right reason,
Mhm.
because healthcare can be a very mentally taxed, and I'm sure that this is every job, even different field, even different careers, but
Mhm.
just from my exposure to it, I've noticed that that healthcare can be a very, very mentally taxing job. And because of that, it's very important that people are going into it for the right reasons. I know growing up, I had a lot of family that really pushed me to become a doctor.
Mhm.
And so, because of that, I thought, okay, I want to become a doctor, but I'm really glad that that's not what I did. And I'm really glad that I listened to what I wanted to do and what my own passion was, which also ended up also being in healthcare for its own reasons. Um, I would say explore your, if you do find that you are interested in healthcare, that's amazing. It's a very rewarding career as well.
Mhm.
And I would say explore all your options. There's so many amazing career opportunities out there in healthcare. If you want to go to medical school, that's awesome too.
Mhm.
I have a lot of friends that are in med school and in their residency right now, and it's tough for them, but I can tell that they really love it and that they're going to make great doctors.
Mhm.
But there are also so many other amazing healthcare careers that are also very well paying and um, very, well in quality of life.
Mhm.
So make sure you decide what's right for you. And if you are not ready to go for 7+ years of school after undergrad,
Mhm.
then just think about what you can truly realistically want for yourself, and don't be afraid to do something that might be a little bit different, because you might be really happy that you did. I'm really happy that I chose perfusion, and I think I'm really happy that my quality of life is what it is now, and that I didn't go to med school because it wasn't what I really wanted,
Mhm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to go to med school, then I wish them the best of luck, and I think that's an amazing thing to do.
Mhm. So just exploring options.
Explore your options and just educate yourself on everything that's out there before you make a decision.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, that's
Yeah.
it. Thank you so much for your advice. It was really, really helpful. Do you have any other thoughts to share?
Um, I would also just say, I know high school is a tough time. There's a lot of pressure, but I think that everyone finds their way and everyone does something that they love to do one way or another. I remember one thing that I learned, that one of my friends told me when I was applying to grad schools, and I was really nervous about just college, and I'm pretty sure that's how a lot of people in your grade now feel.
Mhm.
Just remember that there's, just keep in mind your end goal of what you want out of life, and there's always going to be a million different ways to get there.
Mhm.
And so if you feel like you're sure of yourself and you're trying to find yourself, once you found yourself, there's many ways to get to that end goal, and there's not always one exact formula to do it, even if that's how it seems.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Yeah. Well, thank you so much.